Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday to you. I'm so excited. Today is the day, you all. We're going verse by verse through the book of Job, and we get to chapter 38 where God speaks. Job's been saying, "Where is God? Why doesn't he talk to me? I want to talk to God." And so God's going to show up, and now Job gets what he asked for. He gets more than he asked for, and it's amazing. My name is Tim Harris. It's 10 o'clock. Did I say that? And it's time for 10 with Tim. We do this every day, Monday through Friday, and today is the end of a really good week in the Word. And man, I tell you, I hate to start today because I hate for it to finish. I just love so much these chapters. I just really do. Part of it's because I love creation and I love God's own celebration of creation. And that's what you have here. I mean, it's just God. You just can understand God's own delight in what he has made and the complexity of what he has made. And I love it so much. So let's jump in. So Job's been saying, I just want to talk to God. Remember that Job's big question is the persistent human question of innocent suffering. You know, we know that there's suffering, and we know that many, many times we get what's coming to us. We were asking for it. We deserve it. But Job finds himself in a situation where his suffering is just, there's this overplus, this abundance, this overabundance of pain that can't be explained by some sort of extraordinary sin. I mean, Job doesn't claim to be perfect, but he's just saying, I need God to tell me what I did to deserve all this. So that's the question, just the justice of God in the face of innocent human suffering. And we still ask that question, you all. But anyway, Job has been just, fed up with his friends, just wanting to hear from God. And so in chapter 38, God speaks. And what we get in these chapters 38, 39, 40, 41, I believe, you get these two different speeches of God, and then you get this brief, muffled answer from Job in between each one. So it's just kind of, again, I think it's kind of funny. But let's just go. So chapter 38, God speaks from out of the whirlwind, out of the storm. And this is what he says: Who is this? Who is this that questions my wisdom with such ignorant words? Now, I want to dig a little deeper into the question God asked because it's important. The words are important. Who is this? First off, just, spoiler alert, God's going to basically, for 2 speeches and 4 chapters, continue to just flatten Job with these questions. And it's really 3 types of questions. Who are you? Were you there? And are you able? I mean, just pay attention over and over and over. Who are you? Were you there? And are you able? They are, in some sense, rhetorical questions in the sense that they're impossible to answer, or at least the implied answer is always, I am nothing, I wasn't there, and I am not able. Are you following me? And so just, it's a really interesting, ironic way that God answers Job. I keep saying that he flattens Job, but indeed he doesn't. It's exactly what he doesn't do. If God were coming in, on the side of the friends, then Job would be condemned and humiliated, but that's not what God does. In this one place where he says, brace yourself like a man, that's not God flattening Job. That is the Creator, who created man in his own image and breathed his own breath, his own spirit, his own life into him. It's God, asking Job to stand up and be the man you were created to be. In these 4 chapters, God talks about creation, about creativity, divine creativity, and creatureliness. He talks about all of these wild animals, all of the wild beasts. Never talks about the human creature. And some people take that to say, well, that's God's way of saying humans are so insignificant that they don't even rank, that God would rather talk about ostriches, than human beings because they're so insignificant. And I insist that is not what this speech does. That is not what God is doing here. Indeed, the human creature isn't described as a creature because it's the human creature that is addressed in the discourse. Does that make sense? God's talking to the human creature. That's what sets us apart. God tells Job, stand up. Again, Job is created in God's own image, and so God is able to converse. God is able to connect and speak to the human creature in a way impossible with any other creature that God has made. So this very speech, which, as I keep saying, he flattens Job. Again, he doesn't flatten Job. It's exactly what he doesn't do. He elevates Job. Now, he doesn't condemn him, doesn't judge him. At the same time, he doesn't vindicate or even, God doesn't respond at all to the questions Job is asking. God doesn't explain his justice, and God doesn't answer Job's personal questions about his own, sin or guilt or suffering. God doesn't deal with any of those questions. Now, why not? Well, you could say he does. You could say he doesn't. I feel like it's like when my son, who's a grown man now, but when my son was little, I don't know the first time, he ever asked me where the babies come from. It's probably when he was 2 or 3, And at that point, I thought I could answer that question, but you can't possibly understand, You're asking a question that is beyond what you're capable of absorbing. I'm not saying you're dumb. I'm just saying you can't handle the dream. You can't. I could answer that question, but it's, who are you? Were you there? And are you able? And the question is, no, you're not. And so this is part of what God does here. In the ironic, answering of Job with all of these basically unanswerable questions, he manages to convey and reassure Job of God's complete goodness without ever broaching those questions. We'll keep talking about it, but I think it's amazing. So let's jump in. Brace yourself like a man. Who is this? Let's go back to that question. Who is this? Verse 2, chapter 38, the very first words of God. Who is this? The Hebrew there says, who is this that darkens my counsel, or who darkens my wisdom? Who is it that darkens my design? This is a question that God asked. And it goes directly back to Job's own words. And gosh, I don't remember. Was it chapter 12? If I go back, I'll waste our time. I think it's like chapter 12, maybe verse 22, where Job says something to the effect of, God plunges light into gloom or plunges light into darkness. It's one of Job's probably most serious accusations against God, because it gets to the very essence and nature of God's own character, that God, who is a God of light, in him is light, and in him there's no darkness at all. That's what the word says. But Job has darkened, the light of God's wisdom and design. And this is perhaps that which God has taken offense. You don't call light darkness when you're talking about God. In him there's no darkness at all. So who is it that darkens, that dares to darken my design? So from there, God begins to just give Job these questions, question after question after question. Like I say, they're all sort of the same question. Who are you? Were you there? And are you able? Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you know so much. Who determined its dimensions? Just question after question after question. Chapter 38, I think it follows in some ways the basic order of Genesis chapter 1, light and darkness, the separation of water from land, let there be light, all of that, let there be dry land. Have you ever commanded the morning to appear? I mean, gosh, I just love all of this so much. Tell me about it if you know. Do you realize the extent of the earth? Have you ever explored the ocean's depths? Oh, I just love it so much. Have you visited the storehouses of the snow? I love that. It's so beautiful. Or have you ever seen the storehouses of hail? I loved it. Who created a channel for the torrents of rain? Does the rain have a father? Who gives birth to the dew? I just love it. Can you direct the movement of the stars? Oh, wow, God is so great. God is so amazing. And I mean, God just comes out. Remember, was it Exodus chapter 33? Is Exodus chapter 33? Where Moses, I think it's the place where Moses is, show me your glory. And I think that's a place where Moses says, let let me know your ways that I may know you. Something like that. Exodus chapter 33, 13, I believe. Let me know your ways, I may know you. So this is what God is doing in these discourses now. Just showing Job, reminding Job of his ways. Can you do this? Were you there when I did this? And it's just, let me know your ways that I may know you. God is going to reveal his utter goodness and sovereignty and power just by, just revealing his ways to Job. And it's amazing. Chapter 39, God begins to speak about wild animals. Again, the only tame animal he talks about here is the horse, and it's a war horse, and that's sort of different. But it's interesting that, again, in some ways, God is addressing Job as Adam, as the human creature. And so it's interesting that God talks about everything in creation that has to do with all the animals that we haven't tamed, the ones that we don't know anything about. And I just love that. I think it's interesting, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think verses 13 to 18 in chapter 39 is the longest stretch where God doesn't ask any questions. And it's almost like God himself gets so tickled about the ostrich because she's just so weird and wonderful that there for a moment he's just talking about her, the ostrich. And God forgets to ask Job any questions because it's like, man, she lays her eggs on top of the earth, and then she's the worst mother in the world. She don't care anything about her babies. I mean, it's just so good. It's just so good. Again, just God's own delight in his own creativity and in the marvel of everything that he has made. I love it. So again, we'll pick up right here in chapter 40 on Monday morning. I just want to keep talking. I love it so much. I just love it. Job will answer briefly. The Lord says to Job, do you still want to argue? And Job says, no, actually I don't. But then God lays into him one more time. We'll talk a little bit more on Monday about how we should interpret and how these divine discourses fit into the book of Job and actually answer his questions and our questions about sufferings. We'll pick up there on Monday. Listen, if you don't have a church home, Woodburn Baptist Church, we'd love to have you in person in worship on Sunday, 8, 9, 30, and 11. I'm preaching through the book of Nehemiah verse by verse. I'll be in, chapter 4 on Sunday? So join us either online or please in person. If not, I will see you Monday morning, 10 o'clock for 10 with Tim. I love you guys so much. Chapters 40 and 41 for Monday, okay? Job